came into the room and she's like, look at my phone. And then I couldn't see it, so I had to look at mine. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, it's going to be a good game, but I can't bet against Tom Brady. I have the Bucs winning 31-27 and Tom Brady going to his 10th championship.
Aaron Rodgers and his people were like, they listened to our episode and they said, hold our cheesehead or coat.
Donovan Mitchell, who right now looks to be a superstar.
Just amazing. And I don't care what the Red Sox got for trading Mookie Betts and David Price. The Dodgers, in my opinion, win it. I don't have to see what players they gave up.
Yeah, that's not just the Chiefs. That's Andy Reid. He knows the defenses so well because he's such a great offensive mind. That
well, you said you can't bet against Tom Brady, and as a Cowboys fan and what I just did last weekend, I am not gonna bet against Aaron Rodgers.
It was a great series. Game 4 was one of the best games I've ever watched in my entire life.
Just goes to show the offense for the Dallas Stars could not keep up, and when the defense needed to step up, the Lightning's offense just overpowered them.
Chris Paul is one of the most underrated players of all time. He's been the best player wherever he goes, and that includes with the Rockets. Yeah, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl. I mean, that's all I can really say. There's 2 of the top 5 players in the league, and they are very, very good.
Yeah, and I really think the Clippers' chance to win the championship was last year, and they were up 3-1 against the Denver Nuggets.
Hello, I'm Taylor Hearn, and you listen to The Outsiders' Opinions with Kevin and Austin.
What's up, y'all? Welcome to our NBA Opinions of the Week for September 5th. Make sure to check out our other Opinions of the Week for September 5th. But today we will be discussing, for NBA opinions, we will be discussing teams that have a quality chance of winning their conference in the playoffs, and then some surprise teams at the end as we are getting close. We're about 3 weeks away, I think, till preseason for NBA. Or maybe a trade happens like Goran Dragic coming to the Mavs. You never know. But let's start with your conference teams in the West, Austin.
So my teams that have a quality chance, it doesn't mean like there's some teams that I'll show my example for the East that I don't think this team has a quality chance, so I think they have an okay chance. Quality meaning better than average. So my teams in the West that I think have a quality chance of winning the conference in the playoffs, so making the NBA championship. Jazz, Clippers, Warriors, Lakers, Suns, Nuggets. I have 6 teams that I believe have a quality chance of making it. What about you? What's your West?
Interesting that you had the Clippers. I don't have the Clippers. I have the Lakers, Nuggets, Jazz, Suns, Warriors. So I got 5. I didn't think about the Clippers just because of Kawhi's injury. Isn't he going to be out for most of the season?
Yes, but I feel like if he comes back 100%, it wouldn't matter.
Okay. Yeah, that's why I left the Clippers off. Any teams that surprise you on here? I'm betting Suns.
My surprise team for the West, or just surprise team in general, that is going to be bad is the Trailblazers. I think the Trailblazers will be surprisingly bad. I think they may not make the playoffs bad. Like they have a terrible start, trade Dame, and then they're rebuilding by next year bad. But we'll see.
Yeah, I agree. The surprise team in the West is the Trailblazers for me as well. But I'll go a little bit different. And I think a team that could do pretty bad is maybe the Spurs. Because they lost DeRozan, or no?
That makes
It's a
sense.
stretch.
However, I still feel like they'll be good enough to not be terrible. I think they'll be better than the Trailblazers this season. I'll say that.
Yeah. I agree with the Trailblazers, but I didn't just want to agree again. So I kind of want to take a stretch. But
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to pick a surprise bad team in the West. I think you could say, we'll save the surprise. Do you want to do the surprise good team now? Because I think we could talk about that's pretty easy for the West.
You think? Okay, I'll let you go first.
Okay, I'm gonna say, or is it really not a surprise? I think Grizzlies. They could be a surprisingly good team, given
I
the
said
trades.
Pelicans because I feel like that'd be more surprising than The Grizzlies. I said Grizzly. I thought about Grizzlies at first, but they'd only made the playoffs. And I don't know how much better they get. Like I still think they're around the 7 or 8 seed, but I feel like the Pelicans could make the playoffs, and so they were my surprisingly good. If the Kings make some moves, they would be up there, but I really don't know what the Kings are gonna do. They have way too many guards. So the surprise good team for me in the West was the Pelicans.
Okay, I thought about the Pelicans, but I was like, eh. But so I chose the Grizzlies. Um, so I think now we can move on to the East. Let's go to the contenders. Um, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, so my contenders, these are teams that have quality chance. Or some. So I'll start it off with a team I think has an okay chance, and that's the Bulls. The Bulls have a lot of good players on their team that I feel like if they get really hot during the playoffs, they have guys who've been on deep runs before. DeRozan's made it to the conference championship before. Some other guys on that team, they've obviously made the playoffs before. But the teams I feel like have a quality chance are the Heat, Nets, Bucks. I would be very surprised if one of those three teams does not make it. And I'm only giving the Heat the benefit of the doubt because they made it in 2020 and they added a guy in Kyle Lowry who's won a championship back in 2019. Um, the Nets are my favorites to win, and I'm not going to give the Bucks no chance. I still think they have a quality chance to repeat, but repeating is very hard in this league. We've seen the Warriors struggle doing that against the Cavs in 2016. They had to add KD to win twice in a row, so it's really hard to repeat. And yeah, those are the only three teams I can really see having a quality chance of winning their conference.
You and I have the same three teams. I was like debating to put the Heat on because like the Bucks and Nets, I'm not sure. Like the Heat could do really well with Lowry. I just wasn't sure. I think the Nets win, but I could also see maybe the Bucks make a play. Um, hope hopefully Bucks and Nets are conference finals, not what it was this year when it was just conference. No, it wasn't even conference. It was division. No, why am I
Conference semifinals is what it's called.
semifinals?
Yeah,
Yeah, conference semifinals. Sorry, I'm just stuck with MLB in my head. Because I think that would be a great. It was a great conference semifinals game, and maybe if Kevin Durant doesn't have his foot on the line, we have an entirely different champion. But I'm leaning more towards the Nets. Now let's go to our surprisingly good team. I was gonna say the Bulls, but I don't think it's much of that a surprise that they'll be good. So I think I'm going to say Raptors. That could be a
wow,
surprisingly good team.
wow.
I'd be quite
Okay.
surprised guessing
Wow.
from your because I don't the Bulls don't count right as a surprisingly good team.
No, I wouldn't think the Bulls count. No. Wow. Interesting.
Who's your surprise
Interesting.
team?
My surprise team is the Hornets for good. I think the surprise team, Hornets. I think the Hornets not only made the playoffs, but definitely could get a top 5 seed.
That would be quite a surprise. Top five. Very interesting. Now let's go with our surprisingly bad teams. I am going to say New York Knicks.
Hmm. Even with the addition of Kemba.
I think I don't like I said in the other NBA video. I don't think Kemba plays much for the Knicks because of the knee injuries he's had.
Hmm.
So that's why I think
Interesting.
they won't do well.
My surprise team. Now, I'll be very surprised if you don't react negatively to this. My surprise team, the Hawks. I really don't think the Hawks are going to be as good as most people think. I think the Hawks make the playoffs, but as an 8 seed.
Interesting. Wow. I was not expecting that. Because the Hawks made a lot of good moves. And they still have the coach. Why am I forgetting his name? Their interim coach. And now he's the head coach. Do you know who I'm talking about for the Hawks? It's an easy
Oh,
question.
Nate McMillan.
Yeah. So I think they build off that, but I definitely see them making the playoffs. I said 8 seed. I don't think they get back to the five. Or yeah, they were at the five last year. But maybe six. So another team that like surprisingly good for the West. but like I wouldn't count it as surprisingly good. I think they'll just be better, but they'll still be in the pretty high in the lottery, and that's the Rockets because they made some really nice picks. It's just so it was a good foundation, but I still think they're not going to be anywhere close to the playoffs. What do you think about that?
Why do you think that?
I don't think they're anywhere close to the playoffs because of how just good the West is. But I like the players they got, so I think they'll be better than what they were last year, if that makes sense.
And by better, you mean what?
How many wins did they have last year? So they had 17. Like I'm thinking 20, 25. But like they'll
25?
still be a pretty bad team. It's just I think a lot of people are thinking.
Do you think they'll be, you don't think they're going to be the worst team in the conference is what you're saying?
I don't
You
think they're
think
going to be the worst team in the
who would
conference.
you say?
Let me
Timberwolves?
say, oh, Thunder.
Thunder?
I think
Thunder?
Thunder. I think Thunder. Maybe also Timberwolves. That could also be part of my hatred for the Timberwolves now.
Yeah, I think Jalen Green will be good for the Rockets. I could see them winning 30 games, but again, that Western Conference really is going to hinder their record.
But yeah, but like they don't fit into my surprisingly good because I think surprisingly good is team that like makes it to the playoffs.
I would not necessarily say making the playoffs, but they get really close to a playoff
Okay.
berth. Meaning like if the Rockets you think are going to win 40 games isn't going to get them to the playoffs, but I would say that's surprisingly good. That's adding 23 wins. You're not going to go 40 and 42 and make the playoffs in the West this year, but I would say that's surprisingly good, even though that they're probably still a 9 seed in that case.
Yeah. So any other thoughts before we conclude this episode on the NBA? I'm surprised. I almost thought about Wizards for surprisingly good.
I
I
don't think
kind of
it's
like
that
what they did.
surprising though. I think the
Okay,
Wizards do
gotcha.
better than the Hawks next year in the regular season. I think the Wizards get the 7 seed or 6 seed. Hawks get 7 or 8 seed. But yeah, it's gonna be. I hope the Hawks prove me wrong. I really like that team, but I just don't think they have the veteran core necessary to have a long playoff run again. And if the Nets and Bucks are on opposite sides of the bracket to where they meet in the conference championship, I really think the Hawks aren't going to go back to the conference championship.
That's a very good point. Yeah, I agree. I think Wizards do better than the Hawks. Um, so tell us what you think about that. What we all thought in the comments of our videos. Make sure to check out our other opinions of the week and let us know what you think of the new format. Thank you for listening to Outsiders Opinions.